Thank you, guys. So, hi there. So, my name is Weichen. So, I'm the senior engineering manager from Amplitude, which is the number one product X company. So, if you have you're building a digital product, if you know how you can optimize and get insights of all how customers are using it, then you should try Amplitude. But I'm here not talking about the company. So today I'm going to talk about winning the trust of data leaders for enterprise SaaS products. So it's a very long title. So, but if you work for a SaaS company, of your executives, or you're thinking about starting on your own business on enterprise product, maybe there's something that's that you can hopefully that will be interesting to you. So first of all, talk about about a little bit about me, a little bit about why I choose this topic, and then I will tell you who are the data leaders and why winning their trust is important, and finally how to do that. Okay. First, a little bit about me, right? So I started as an engineer, and now I'm engineering manager. So I've been in many companies, mostly startup, especially Y Combinator startups, and most of the companies I stayed is working on enterprise SaaS. So hopefully, if you know some of the logos, but if you don't, that's totally fine, right? So that means I have some knowledge that I learned through my course of the careers on the enterprise products. And the other topic about the market, right? So why I choose this, because right now everyone knows it's we're in a recession, all the layoffs. So everyone is struggling both on cutting their own costs and at the same time asking anyone else, their customers, to actually paying more. So you see the dilemma here, but I think everyone is trying to do their best to keep your lights on, right? So keep survive the winter. And that's exactly why I'm talking about how can we achieve that goal? How can we win in the trust? So the first question here is, who are the data leaders? And so there are all the different people. You must see the titles as chief data officer or CIO or CTO or CISO or head of engineering, all the different things. So, but on high level, they share some common traits and make some common tasks. Right. First, they drive data-driven decision makings, right, for the company. Right. So they want to build that infrastructure, and they want to also encourage that data-driven decision making culture, so that people are not just speaking on, I don't know, CEO, hey, I want to go do this and that, but they're actually making on decisions based on data, right? So that also whenever you have a bets or you have a strategy roll out, you can also validate the results of that, right? So data governance and analytics. So we have all the access controls, compliance, GDPR, all the different things. We want to make sure the data is in good hands. Even though in for example, because that's actually governed by law, that you have to have those controls. And in case of a data breaches, you have to have a response plan, all of that. So this is also what the data leaders will think about. And lastly, maximize the value of the data assets, right? So you have all this PIIs and all maybe the other. It's like a gold mine you're sitting on, all the data that you collected through different means, and you can make lots of use of it, right? For example, if you can understand the customer behaviors and to drive your designs, or you can do smart recommendations based on the historic data, or you learn the marketing analytics and learn how the ads are performing and making the best ads impression with the least amount of budget. That's how you're going to win, right? So that's all the things the data leaders are thinking about. So why winning the data leaders trust is important? Because again, we're talking about as a enterprise SaaS product, right? So how you win. So the first thing you'll notice that data leader is not always come to the game at the first time. Lots of time, you have a really good product, you gain popularity, and the early adapters that will start using it, and you will maybe evangelize. Oh, like think about earlier the Slack or even Jira or the other enterprise product like Miro, Figma, and all the different things. They gain the popularity and maybe get probably in a smaller group, either the data team or the product team, and then eventually, it gets lots of popularity, and it kind of bubbles up to the leadership to decide, we need a strategy. Right. So whether we want complete buy-in, how does this sit with the overall data strategy? That's where the data leaders comes into play, who can be either an ally or a blocker. Maybe the product team has a really good time working with some tools, but then the data leader come in and say no, we will not going to approve that, and we're not going to provision additional code, whether it's a cost or security or any concerns. Or it could be an ally if enough data is provided to convince them, and he will be converted to and evangelized with a broader team. Then all of a sudden, now from the one team adopting the tool to 10 or 100, right? So that's why the data leaders are really, really critical there. But of course, the first, you have to get there first. You have to build a product that has somewhat legitimacy, like providing values, so that caught the data leader attention. And then now finally, it's on this table to decide what to do. But now what, right? So now it's let's say you're there, what can you do to maximize your chance of winning their trust, right? And that's the topic of this meeting, I guess. So I guess the first, there are on the high level, there are two different archetypes of data leaders. One we call the strategist. That's more thinking of the strategy side, right? So they more care about what's the data strategy and how does it align with overall company's strategy, how it can attribute the values or the cost and that we spend to the returns, right? So that's the part that's the typical title you see there is Chief Data Officer, Head of Analytics, Director of BI, things like that. And the other archetype is the architect, right? Of course, that's more tech oriented. They care a lot more about infrastructure, about the pipeline, about the data quality, and of course the cost. So and then there's some typical titles you see here, but mostly on the research and technology side of things. Yeah. And the other important thing to mention here is there's also archetypes of businesses, right? So as businesses try to step into the digital world, and there are businesses that just started born into the digital natives, right? So think about all the sharing economy like DoorDash or things like that. Jira, that they started as a digital native. They do not have all the traditional days, unlike other traditional business, whether it's an oil retails, things like that. They might have business that's been there in decades or centuries, that's been doing things a totally different way. Well, at the same time, they are still trying to adopt, right? They're trying to transform into the digital era. But keep in mind that the mentality and then the reality is also very different from this two group of businesses, right? That's why it's important to make that distinction. So now this gives us four quadrants, right? So we have strategist, digital native, and digital transformer strategist, and so on. So there are four different kind of archetypes. And here are as I worked with different companies and different customers, so I had a chance to talk to someone that really understands their mindset and what they care about. Again, it comes on. So there are some commonalities, but there are some subtle differences. And I'm not going to go through all the details, right? So, but on the high level, as you see. On the let's talk about let's see what can let's go through each of the, because I'm just thinking about whether we have enough time to go through this, right? So let's talk about the strategist digital native category, right? So this is typically found in the large corporate digital native companies. If we're to think about the strategies, right? So how they can align the goals and how to do the communications, lead the cross-functional teams, right? So how can they communicate the complex insights to the stakeholders? And the other thing about the data management and analysis, they may roll up to the CDO, CIO, CEO, depending on the company size and structure. So on the other hand, on the architect role of a digital native, so they are, again, more thinking about infrastructures, right? So thinking about data pipelines, data warehouses, big data technologies, thinking about the cost, with the database schema and all the, data quality, validations, all the security protocols. So it's privacy and compliance, that's all they're thinking about, right? So typically they roll up to a senior technology role, such as CTO. Now, in the strategist role for the digital transformers, so the common pattern there is, as they transform to digital business, they have a broad understanding of the overall landscape of the data, but they only manage a subset of it, right? So imagine a franchise like fast food, like McDonald's, Burger King. They might have the business that's been doing their way for a long time. All of a sudden, they start doing online orders. Where you have all those order machines in the store and all this ads and and all the different promotions. Things could be tracked in different channels. So maybe there will be a department that owns the digital experience, where maybe the other traditional outlets is handled the different departments, and that's kind of is a reality for lots of digital transformers. And that's a reality for the roles of as a data leader to only have a full control of that subset of the data, right? So, and as also kind of a corollary of that, they are really keen on providing business values. So that means, I guess as a country, right? So consider a digital native strategist. So they will be more risk taking, and you'll be okay with doing, for example, A/B testing of lots of features. So you may have lots of insights and theories where you can test out. Whereas in the digital transformers, you basically your chance is limited, and it's really important that you provide strong data and connections so that any insights or suggestions you have can tie back to top line revenue. This is actually a top priority so that for the data leader to actually show the impact that they did with all this investment they have. Because the activity will be asking why you're spending so much money on this new pipeline that they don't understand, right? So that's why but there's still some components like data management, the data quality, architecture, security, that's still there. That doesn't change. And on the role, the role may the org structure may roll up to CIO, CEO. It all may roll up just to the specific org leader in the part of the company, right? Depending on the structure, because sometimes it would be a really a humongous with multi departments or geographic separations. And finally, the architect for the digital transformers. Again, it's T-shaped, right? It managed a subset, although it had broader vision. And for them, the data quality is of the most important part, because again, this is again kind of a instinct from the traditional way of doing things, right? So if to err is human, and anything that involves forms or any sort of manual inputs is subject to data quality questions, especially insurance or other things. So they've set up a protocol to ensure things that they are really risk averse and they want to avoid any possible issues. That's why any new technology you're introducing, you want to make sure you have good observability, you have a good data quality and self-serve capacity to let them see what they want to see and to let them to diagnose and correct things if they need to. So this is super critical for the architects on the digital transformers. And optimization performance is another thing where, of course, it comes down to the cost, right? So it's maybe they have a little bit of budget. So showing that what they can do, given the budget, is really, really important. And on the org structure, typical roles to CTO or head of IT. All right. Okay. So now, how do we know all of different archetypes and stuff, and what can we do? Do we want to specifically tailor the needs and address their concerns? Of course, if you have that resources, be my guest, right? You should be doing all of that. You should be asking specifically what they want and providing all the things you can. But there's some general guidance I want to provide, right? Whether you are a data analyst or executives, when you try to build a product, what you should be thinking about, right? How can you win the trust? And here's some kind of tips I have, right? So, and the first most important part, in my opinion, is quick time to value. What that means is, it's always a huge commitment when they're involved in the enterprise deal for, because they have maybe vendor review, they have to go through legal to see the agreements, and go with the yearly fiscal plan, all of that before they finally decide the green light, pay you something, right? So, and then they will be asking, what can we get? So they will be constantly asking questions and constantly value, especially given this economy, right? So that's why quick time to value is super key here, right? So if you can clearly show the value you're getting, and you clearly show the value they're getting fast, that's a really good testimony, for them to basically pay the bill, right? So the second part is clear value attribution. Again, so this is kind of related to the first one. The first one is about the time. This is about just clear signs or clear correlations. So this requires you to provide, it's maybe you think about whether it's the UI or instrumentation, how you can connect the feature or the service that you're providing to the value they're getting. And it's best that you connect them directly to the dollar value impact on their revenue. That's probably the best use cases. The connection to other key metrics is also good. If they are like DAU or just some typical metric, that's also good. But revenue is probably the single most important, like most convincing tool. If you'd like to spend a dime to get a dollar, they will totally do that, right? So, and the ability to attribute to that, maybe what would be a good example for that, right? Let's say let's take the food delivery as example, right? Let's say you are shopping, you're seeing all these food delivery restaurants, and you couldn't decide, and eventually you put something, you just order in the shopping list, but then you did not check out, and you did not you just leave the app, right? So this time window, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, where the delivery app can actually send a push notification to you and maybe offer you a coupon or something to get you re-engage the app and finish this order. there's actually a really short time window to do that. But then you can actually see, because if you do the right instrumentation, you can actually see with that promotion, how much revenue are you saving, and that's if you can, deliver that value with the minimum implementation overhead and getting more revenue, then that's a clear win for that business, right? So that's just one example. Now, observability. So again, this is all related to the other ones. So this is especially true with data-related product. Sometimes you try to, win simple. So you try to build the tools so simple to use with hiding all the details under the rug, which is nice when it's in the good case. But in the data, there's always data quality problem. And as one says, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you have an issue, doing ETLs or sending or receiving data, it's better to surface that error as clear as possible and notify the users about the issue, and maybe even let them self-diagnose and take actions, rather than trying to send a really vague generic messages, and they have to talk to the customer services and saying it actually drives additional burden to you, right? So the more visibility you provide and the more self-servicing capacity you have, it actually saves a lot on the cost, and also introduce the trust on both sides. Compliance, enterprise, this is especially true for enterprise and especially true for the digital transformers, because they are risk averse. They want to minimize the risks and any possibilities, right? So there are, I think the typical ones we're seeing, security measures about the GDPR, like how would you handle data subject access request or deletion request, and there should be protocols following up on that. And maybe that's, if you can even design your tools in the way with those compliance requirements in mind ahead of time, it actually saves a lot of work tremendously after, right? So, and finally is communication, right? So I think lots of time the trust is just on the stance you have, right? So you don't try to dodge problems. If you have a security issue or you have a bug or you're causing problem, you're not living up to the standard, be transparent and showing the effort you're doing, and stick to the contract, of course, as much as you can with as the service level agreements and everything. But just that kind of a mentality and that open attitude will help you win in the trust with the data leaders. I think this is also something that lots of people often forget, that it's the personal connections definitely helps in lots of cases. Well, that's a lot of talk. So, and that's all I have for this part. Yeah, hopefully this is interesting for you guys. Yeah.
Awesome, Weichen. Thanks so much. Yeah, some really great, insightful content there. Once again, I want to ask the audience, it is time for hand clap emojis or smiley faces or robots, just something to show your appreciation to Weichen. Also, yeah, if anybody in the LinkedIn live stream wants to show their appreciation with emojis as well or likes, that's fantastic. Cool. So I want to flip it over to our Q&A here, which we have a few questions coming in. So we have a question from Julian. Love your engagement today, Julian. I haven't seen you online at one of our events before, but thanks so much for being an active audience member. So there, Julian has asked, how can a manager communicate the importance of a centralized data platform to higher management? The data platform is focused on improving developer productivity and developer relations in such economical times. How can one convince stakeholders of the need for such a platform?
Okay, so that's okay. Thanks for the question. I think this more or less aligns with what I talked, but this is actually more for like internal tools, right? So it's like a tool you have for your internal developers to provide more values. This at the end of the day, it's actually applies to similar principles there. And how can you convince the leaders what's the value you're adding on top of the every dollar they spend on the tools, right? So to start with that, even before going there to specifics, like in the important part, actually, alignment on the strategy, that the leadership has to recognize that developer productivity and developer experience is an important factor that the company actually cherish. If there are places where I say I'll be customer first, that means we'll burn out any of the engineers and their team. So the view of the leadership on the engineering team is important. Having that shared view that they are willing to invest in the productivity and experience is important. That's the first start. The second is actually a objective measure on the experience. I know this is kind of difficult. It seems it's analogous to the user experience. How would you measure the UX improvement of your product? There are some typical metrics like NPS, right? So like you send survey and they ask questions. So there are tools out there where you can send surveys to their engineer team and ask them how they feel about that and what are the common issues. If you have a chance to address, what's the top technical debt or other issues they have. So they have some data to back up your claim, right? You can't just go walk into your hire manager, hey, we need this tool, otherwise. And so you should have data to back up your claims. And again, they will ask, sure, okay, so what's you can achieve? So you should have a plan that by investing this much and giving me this time, and I can achieve what, or either improving that score in any specific areas they have. So you should have come up with a plan, right? So that's then you have a much better chance in convincing the leadership. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. Again, once again, it kind of comes down to the data and the kind of value that it can supposedly bring there. So yeah, look, I think that's all the questions we have. Actually, I think there might be another one here from Julian. Yeah, how can a team create a data dashboard that has metrics about the data they handle or generate? Any best practices while one starts to build such a platform that would empower teams?
Well, okay, maybe you should start using Amplitude. Just joking aside, you need have a centralized dashboard. Definitely helps, and there are lots of tools out there. It really depends on how you might want to centralize to a place. If you use, again, for digital natives and especially in the backend part, maybe Datadog is a really popular one, right? You can build dashboards out there. Otherwise, yeah, you having I see something, just use Jira or Confluence and building automations around that to have a centralized place. So, I think the tools come to secondary. There are lots of handy tools that you can use, right? Just agreeing that, so aligning on the basically North Star metrics and SLOs, like basically what your team really values. And that's how to measure. And there's lots of companies you see, especially that's, data driven and, that you have their metrics even in the public monitor in their office, right? So everyone can see what's going on today, right? What's the trend? So that's a great way to promote visibility. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for that. Again, Julian for the questions and then Weichen for the content. So I think that will probably wrap up Weichen's talk and presentation tonight. Once again, yeah, super grateful for you stepping up and being part of the community tonight. Yeah, I guess we'll move on to our final presenter. Any final words there, Weichen?
Nope. So thanks for having me, and I will be the audience again.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot. We'll see you around. Cheers.